Well, I guess yeah, I guess to build it up, I guess we might have to start on like maybe a more fundamental level. Do you believe that intuitions can be evidence?
Can intuitions can be evident? Well, what do you mean by evident? Like true?
Evidence. Not yeah, not like not evidence, but evidence for like evidence for other things.
Intuitions can be evidence,
Yeah.
like deductive or inductive evidence.
Um Probably more likely to be like inductive. Like when I use the word evidence, I just mean it raises the probability of something to be true. That's what I take all
Yeah,
evidence to be.
that's inductive evidence. I would say yeah, probably inductive evidence.
Yes. All right, so you take it to be inductive evidence. Yeah. Okay. So, basically, the argument that I have is, when it comes to moral realism, it seems that like, and this is the reason why I believe it's sort of, tied only to a form of utilitarianism. Well, yeah, it's a bit difficult, like to lay out because there's like so many different things. But
True.
yeah,
I believe in you.
um, yeah, um, but yeah, like basically, I well, if the moral realist view that I hold to be somewhat plausible is like a sort of naturalist account. Do you know, like, I assume you're aware of the difference between like a more naturalist versus naturalist
Yeah,
view of realism?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So non-naturalist is like the idea that there's like
The metaphysical.
sort of like yeah, like moral properties that are like if not like sort of observable or like measurable in like a natural sense.
Which,
And
just
like
as a quick
that's
sidebar, hilariously
yeah.
enough, that's my go-to. I never say this, but my go-to thing is always name the moral property. That's always my go-to. Whenever I hear someone say moral realism is real, I'm all right. I'm like, okay, name the moral property. That's what I think in my head.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, I don't find that sort of view of moral reason to be all that plausible. Like it seems, yeah, a bit weird to suggest that like there's like like other form of moral property. Yeah, I hold to more like what I find to be the most plausible sort of view of moral realism is just like a sort of like a natural account where it seems that in like within our like conscious experiences, it seems that we have a sort of process within our brains that um, makes like sort of moral judgments or determinations based on not just like based on our preference, but based on like a sort of like just like a sort of necessary fact of like our psychology. So I think there's like I forgot what the theory is called, but it's like essentially there's like a theory of consciousness, I believe, where it's like say where there's essentially like for example when it comes to like I think actually you would agree with this that like for example when it comes to pain and pleasure you would agree that there's like a sort of there's like sort of within our brains what's happening is there's sort of neurons firing to signal certain like pain inhibitors and pleasure inhibitors or stuff like that, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's all neurobiological. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think that there's a particular component in the brain, I believe, that I think that when we get those kind of signals in our brains, it kind of leads to what we describe as a sort of a bad feeling. So like something that is bad versus something that is good in terms of our experiences of it.
Wait, bro. Quick side tangent.
Yeah, yeah,
This I
yeah,
just thought of this as you were
yeah,
talking, and
yeah,
I wasn't thinking of this as you were talking. What you said inspired
yeah.
me. I was
Okay.
ignoring you. What you
Yeah,
said was so interesting to me that it almost seems
yeah.
to me that naturalism can't even be part of the metaethical branch of moral realism. And the reason why is because
Mhm,
moral realism is not contingent on human behavior, but naturalism is contingent on human behavior. You're trying to prove morality
mhm,
through human behavior. So it's not independent of humanity, it's contingent on humanity.
mhm. Um,
So
yeah.
naturalism is literally impossible to prove objective moral realism because it's contingent on human behavior. It's not independent of humans.
Well, when you say it's contingent on human behavior, I guess do you mean it's like well, what do you mean by that? Like,
Well, it's so like, and this is one of the reasons why I don't think people fully grasp meta ethics. Um,
mhm,
the realism in its true state is
mhm,
intrinsic moral goodness.
mhm,
So it's intrinsic. So that means morality is good because it is good. It's circular. So it's intrinsically good. It's not good based on anything else. But when we and then the opposite of that would be that morality is contingent on something else, then it wouldn't be
mhm,
morality. It would be something called like moral practicality or mutualism. There's two
mhm,
paths you can go down. There's moral realism, or sorry, there's intrinsic morality and there's practical morality. Practical
mhm,
morality is not actually morality. It's a name that we assign to achieving a value that we want. But intrinsic morality, which is what people mean when they say moral realism, is a moral code or a moral system or some sort of moral property that is independent of humanity. Meaning, if all humans died, morality would still exist. Do you see what I'm saying?
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, I guess. I mean, it's interesting, right? This is something that I've been thinking about as well. Is and that's why I'm not like 100% sold on either way on this topic. Is because like, do you think that there can be objective facts about the world that are dependent on the existence of like a human mind?
No. No, I don't believe that.
Because like, for example, like a basic example, it's like if there's is it not a fact that like if there's someone that was tortured at Guantanamo Bay, that's like there's an objective fact to that, right, in some sense, but it's also dependent on the existence of a human mind, right? Or like, oh, am I like saying something dumb there? I don't know.
Well, okay, let me phrase it this way.
Mhm,
If the human species, if all life went extinct 100 years after somebody was tortured in Guantanamo Bay and humanity
mhm,
no longer exists, it is a fact that that event occurred even though there's
mhm,
no consciousness to experience that historical truth,
mhm,
right?
mhm.
So even
Yeah,
though there's
well,
nothing
yeah,
to experience that, it still happened.
even if there's nothing, well, sure, but you would agree that the fact itself was contingent on someone experiencing that torture in the first place, right?
Someone, yeah, so someone was tortured because someone experienced torture. Yes.
Hmm. Yeah, so I guess just what I'm kind of like trying to, yeah, and this is something honestly I don't know like my answer to either. It's just like, would you not say that there's like if that is a fact, and I think it's a fact, and I guess you agree, wouldn't that essentially kind of mean that there's like a sort that there are like facts that we can purport that are like fundamentally kind of contingent on like a human sort of like the like based with on like what the human mind like based on a human mind basically, like is that not kind
Yeah,
of
like you're saying like some facts can't exist unless humans are there to presuppose it.
yeah, well, basically because like I think what your argument that you were kind of making against like the naturalist case was that like because the naturalists are contingent on like the nationalist like arguments contingent on like the existence of like a human behavior. It can't be like a sort of moral realist view. I was wondering that like because if we can agree that there's like a way to have like sort of objectivity even on facts that are dependent on sort of like a human behavior, then it seems that it doesn't necessarily contradict moral realism. If that makes sense.
It doesn't contradict moral realism.
Well, it seems that like your argument was to say that like naturalism can't be like a moral realist view
Mm-hmm.
because it's contingent on human behavior, right?
Yeah.
And I assume the reason you're saying that like naturalism can't be, if naturalism is dependent on human behavior, that it can't be moral realism is because if it's contingent on moral behavior, then or on human behavior, then it's not objective, right?
Yes, but isn't this my criticism of your
Well,
position?
yeah, that's kind of what I'm trying to like point out.
Oh, okay, okay. I thought
That's
you were
kind of what I'm
saying
trying to
something
like lay out.
different than that. I
Yeah,
was like, wait, this sounds like my criticism. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm
yeah,
saying.
yeah.
I'm
I'm just
saying
no, no.
so yeah, I'm saying like
Yeah.
if in the case of moral realism, if life never existed within like an empty space of the universe, morality would
Hmm.
still exist because there would be some sort of moral property, be it metaphysical or physical. It would be independent of life. That's what moral realism is. It's an objective moral standard. It's not contingent on humans. So that's why I reject it, because there's no evidence that there is a contingent moral standard. Sorry,
Mm.
the other way.
No, yeah,
There's no
my,
evidence that there's a necessary moral standard, something that exists, independent of humanity.
oh, okay. I think I get what you mean. I think, yeah, then in that case, it might just be like a sort of semantic dispute. It seems that like your
Yeah,
concept of what moral realism is fundamentally based on the idea that that has to be like a non-natural sort of account of morality. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess if that's just like a semantic dispute, it's not really that interesting to get into. But
true, bro. You're
um,
on my side. Come to the anti-realist side. The truth is, I'm like
look,
agnostic to morality. So,
yeah,
which I'm not
yeah.
sure
Look,
if
like
that's technically the non-cognitivist side, but I'm
yeah.
agnostic to morality until I have sufficient deductive evidence that it is true.
Mhm. Yeah, look, what I'll say is like I think I said this at the very beginning. Like my view on like meta ethics changes like all the time. I'm like right now I'm like 51% kind of because I've heard these arguments that I've just been reading up on. Like I've been trying to understand moral realism more, just about like how different people like justify it and all that. I used to be like a hardcore anti-realist, kind of similar to your position for like I
Mm-hmm.
think most of my philosophical journey. I've only recently just gotten interested in like kind of trying to understand the realist view and I mean, when I it's funny when I argue against other realists, I tend to like kind of go to like anti-realism. But when I argue with anti-realists, sometimes I'll just like defend the realism view, just because it's like interesting to just try to defend different views. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think
Do
that
you
there's like I think that
do you accept my
um,
criticism of the naturalist worldview of like more so like do you understand where I'm coming from when I say that moral realism is independent of humanity? And do you accept that or do you not accept that?
um yeah, well, I mean, if I accepted that, then I would have to, by definition, say that like naturalism can't be moral realism, which I don't think is. I don't know. I don't know if I agree with that. So, I don't think so. Like, I think that like I think I can understand like a sort of like how naturalist like a sort of naturalist account of a sort of moral like realist view. So yeah, but again, that's just the purely like sort of semantic disagreement we have there. It's like
Mm.
if you define moralism in such a way that like only like it has to require some kind of external moral property, then yeah, you're obviously going to say that like there's like any form of naturalism is not like moral realism, and
Yeah, but if we weren't
which is yeah, I mean
if
yeah.
if we weren't what is appealing to some exterior justification, at the end of the
Hmm.
day, wouldn't it just come down to our preferences? Andrew Wilson's famous for doing this, for the ick argument. But if there's no exterior
Hmm.
justification for your moral system at the end of the day, isn't it literally
Hmm.
just your preferences?
Well, when you say there's, I don't think so necessarily. I mean, like, because it depends on like how we're looking at it. Because so there are, I think when it comes to like preferences, like I think that the sort of naturalist account that like I was thinking about was more like if we could prove, for example, that there's a sort of universalizable fact about how the brain sort of processes like stuff like pleasure and pain, such that like for example, like if you were equipped with all the experiential facts that I was equipped with when I'm experiencing a particular thing, then you would you would agree, or you would have the same notion that the thing I'm experiencing is either good or bad. I think that's kind of what how like naturalists generally look at what how like it's a sort of moral, like a sort of objective moral standard that's just based on a sort of like something that exists within humans, or like as a
Okay.
part of like
I
our
mean,
conscious experience.
it seems to me that
Yeah.
any type of naturalistic evidence would seem to be in
Mhm.
favor of, like, ironically enough, like the selfish axiom. You know what I mean? It seems like any type of moral evidence that they
Mhm.
gain from human naturalism is that
Mhm.
it seems to, like, if you believe in evolution, then you would believe that there's programs. This
Mhm.
morality is programmed within the system for a practical use. And
Mhm.
when morality
Well,
becomes practical, it's no longer morality.
mhm. Well, when it comes to that, I think there's one of the arguments is like basically um I think one of the way that the naturalist accounts for that is like when it comes to people's when people have like these kind of beliefs of their reasons for action that are kind of contradictory to what is like good. Like for example, like um like when it comes to like let's say it's someone who's like insanely racist, right? Like there's like a fact about that where they're like doing something that's part of their preference. But I think that what I would argue there is that there's probably like the reason that they haven't come to the view that's like that I think most people hold, which is that racism is bad, is that there's not been a significant enough like deliberative process. So like I think the more that we explore our sort of intuitions around like um like our moral views, I think that we generally come like, and I think there's like evidence for this. It's called I don't know if you've heard of like moral progress.
Yeah, isn't that one of the big evidences that they use for naturalism? Moral progress.
Yeah, yeah. It's this idea that like over time and like kind of we've seen like sort of convergence in like moral views, similar to like other objective fields. So it's like for example, if we take mathematics, in mathematics, like there's been like a there used to be like some kind of divide when in like people have divides on like how we define or determine certain mathematical systems, and then over time there's been a sort of convergence. I think that like there was a good example that I was thinking of was in probability. I think it's the Monty Python problem, Monty Hall problem. I don't know if you heard of it, but it's like the one where it's like a game show where there's like three curtains, and behind one of the curtains there's a prize, or not curtains but doors. And if the and like you pick a door, the game show host opens one of the doors, and then there's nothing inside, and then you have to choose between picking the other two doors. And most people have this intuition, like that, like if you pick one of the doors, either one you pick, there's like a 50-50 chance. But I think there was like a mathematical proof that actually picking one of the doors, there was a 2 by 3 chance. So I think that's whereas the other one had a 1 by 3 chance. And that's very unintuitive. Like I didn't believe it at first when I learned about that problem, and a lot of mathematicians didn't either. But over time, there was like a convergence of their views on like when there was more like deliberative deliberation on like the mathematical proofs. So that was a bit of a ramble, but
Interesting.
yeah.
Um, so what I would actually say about moral progress is it's funny
Hmm.
because, again, like, it seems
Hmm.
like my egoist system takes into account the idea of moral progress, where, first
Hmm.
of all, when you say moral, you're presupposing the value system. The value system is well-being for all. That's the
Hmm.
moral system and moral progress. And the thing that is happening is life is getting better across the planet, across cultures.
Hmm.
And it's funny that they call this moral progress. I would say that, again, I have my criticisms of the word moral because it's so vague. It almost doesn't mean anything. What I would say is
Hmm.
actually happening is technology is improving. Law is evolving to become more efficient.
Hmm.
Economies are growing larger and becoming more efficient. And so what we see is that people live longer, people are happier, people are healthier, and this isn't to say that this isn't to say that it's moral. It's saying
Hmm.
that it's maximizing the value of individuals all across the planet, right?
Mm, so maximizing the value. Um, I guess I'm just a bit confused there. Sorry. You're saying that because people's like lives are getting better, that kind of accounts for like moral progress or something like that. Sorry, I'm a bit lost there.
Yeah, so the naturalists use moral progress as an argument to prove that people are becoming more moral.
Mhm.
But my criticism of this is that well, first of all, you're presupposing that morality is the idea of maximizing well-being for all people. That's not
Mhm.
most people's idea of morality. Um, but yeah, even if you accept that, it's not accurate. It's well, if you accept that definition,
Mhm.
then it is true that you are maximizing well-being across the planet because nations are growing stronger, cultures are learning from superior cultures to be more
Mhm.
social, more peaceful, more
Mhm.
efficient, and so in
Yeah.
this
It's all.
way, yeah, in your sense of the term moral, it would be the
Mhm.
case that they're becoming more moral. But again, I think
Yeah.
the way you're using morality is
Mhm.
the ends of achieving something practical. So it's not
Yeah.
moral in and of itself.
Yeah. Well, it's also like because there's another thing in regards to moral progress which is interesting, which is that so if you look at like the sort of like moral philosophers who came up with like our various like normative ethical theories. So like yeah, for utilitarianism, you have John Stuart Mill, who's like the founder of that theory, or like kind of like I don't know if he's the exact founder, but he's one of them. And then like for deontology, you have like Kant, right? This is like an argument that some people use as well, where it's like, if you look at kind of how those original like theorizers of those philosophies kind of like um, like the predictions they made, or so the sort of judgments they made with their systems, like John Stuart Mill, way before I think it was even like popular opinion to be against racism, was in favor of like more equal rights on like a social level, for people, and also on an economic level, I think. Whereas like if you look at Kant, he was actually like he was really fucking racist. I think he said like one of his famous quotes was like he made a good point, but I can see he was black from head to toe, so I knew he must have been wrong. I think that was unironically a Kant quote.
That's hilarious,
So
dude.
yeah, and so I think like that's kind of like a thing that some people use as well for moral progress, where it's like we can kind of see that when you look at how the theories have been like kind of theorized from the beginning of its inception, and we see that over time there's been a convergence towards like the sort of predictions that utilitarians made about how society should be and like people sort of converging on that view. That's also one part of moral progress that people bring up, but yeah,
Hmm,
I don't
pretty
know.
interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like I said, I'm not like 100% sold on on realism either. I'm probably like I have to think about it more honestly. Like I'm still looking into
Bro,
it. Yeah.
listen, be an
Okay.
agnostic like me, join the anti-realism side, be agnostic, wait
Yeah.
for evidence that proves a positive claim that
Hmm.
there is morality. And yo, we sitting tight over here, bro. Okay, we're waiting for that evidence. It's better to be
Yeah, I don't know.
agnostic than to somebody said this, and it's a true
Hmm.
quote. It's better to be agnostic than to believe something that is false.
Mm. Better to be agnostic than believe something that's false.
Because
Yeah, I
it's
mean,
because false beliefs lead you to dangerous places.
Uh, yeah, I don't know. Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, like, I'm just interested in this, like, the whole field of meta ethics in general. So I'm always looking for just like kind of arguments on both sides. I'm interesting. I'm just very interested in hearing someone provide like good defenses of like moralism, because like I actually used to be and like pretty strongly on your side. I was like, okay, there's no way there's like any kind of like I probably made stronger claims. I was like, I don't think there's any way to prove that there's like an objective moral system or anything like that. But I
You're
don't know.
right.
Like
You're right.
yeah, it probably was. I don't know. Maybe I'll go
Dude,
back to
the
that view next
the
week. Yeah.
yeah, right. The literal best the so I've kind of thoroughly analyzed the arguments for moral realism, and
Hmm.
the best argument I could find was this
Yeah.
idea of intuitionism, which I don't
Yeah.
know how
Yeah.
much you know about intuitionism, but
Yeah.
intuitionism seemed to be the strongest case for moral realism because I looked at all the other, all the other evidences, and they seemed completely unbacked by anything deductive and very rarely, inductive. But
Hmm.
as for the case for intuitionism, it was interesting because it was such a simple thing. It's like, why can't we just, why can't it just be true? Because it seems like it must be true. You know? And of course, like the fatal flaw of this is also a very simple answer, which is that your intuition is not 100% certain. And if it's not even, how can you even prove if it's certain? You would have to prove that your intuition is correct like the majority of the time in order for you to have any kind of evidence
Hmm.
that moral realism is true. But of course, we don't have evidence that proves that moral intuitionism or any type of intuitionism is, majority of the time true. So
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, I've heard of the intuitionism sort of thing. I think I don't know, like when it comes to, sort of evidence and proving realism, I think that like yeah, this is like a path of what is it called? Epistemology that we can get down to
mm,
as well, where it's like, you're kind of thinking about what theories of truth we hold to, and how do we determine whether or not something is true, and like kind of like like there's like different theories. I think it's like what's it called? The biggest one, I think the one that you're kind of touching on is like correspondence theory, where it's like it corresponds with reality, and that's what determines whether it's true or not.
yeah,
um
unironically,
yeah.
epistemology is the most important branch of philosophy that you need to understand before you
Oh yeah.
start forming beliefs. Like it
Oh
just
yeah.
is. Um,
Yeah, I've come to realize that like I think like most like a lot of the philosophical discussions that I see, like where even if it's like moral philosophy or anything, it's like it seems like a lot of people, like there's just a lot of talking past each other when there's like no kind of fundamental grounding of like how we know things, or like
mhm.
what are our definitions of things, like how do we determine what's being true, how do we determine what is true here, like if we're determined, like we're arguing over whether or not like a proposition is true, like, well, it's true on what domain, and right, like what true on what kind
Yeah.
of truth? Yeah,
Well, it's funny because lots of people who
yeah,
debate will debate what's true, but they don't even agree that truth exists. Like lots of
mm,
postmodernists, it's just
yeah,
funny to see like a postmodernist and a non-postmodernist debate because it's like you guys have no grounds to debate each other. You don't even agree on the same terms. You don't agree on the same
mhm,
word. You don't agree that words mean the same thing. So you can't even get started on having a conversation about differing ideologies until
yeah,
you create a bridge about what is true. Postmodernists don't believe in truth, and
hmm,
non-postmodernists do believe in objective truth. So you can't even
yeah,
have a conversation unless you build a bridge to meet in the middle,
yeah,
which you can't really you can't even have a conversation. To be honest, postmodernists are really stupid because you can't have a conversation if objective truth doesn't exist. But yeah,
hmm, yeah. I think uh yeah, but the postmodernist view, I don't actually like I don't consider myself a postmodernist. I don't know like much about the philosophy, or if it has anything. I know that like I
it's
think the
incoherent.
biggest thing, yeah, I think the biggest thing that I see a lot of modernists argue with about, which I think I would agree with, is basically the idea that we um yeah, they kind of do this weird sort of bait and switch where um and this is something that I see like a lot of people do, where it's like they conflate like knowledge and truth, but those are like two concepts, because you can you can say that something is true without necessarily knowing that it's true, depending on your definition of knowledge. So, like, I think a lot of people's like folk definition of knowledge contains like a condition of certainty. So it's like if you don't know something, like if I were to ask you something like, "Do you know that that is true?" So some people might say like, "Okay, yeah, I know that I exist." It's like, "Are you certain?" It's like, "Could you be
Mhm.
wrong?" And it's like, "Yeah, I could be wrong." So it's like, "Okay, so you're not certain. So do you actually know it?" And so they'll probably say, "Well, yeah, maybe I don't actually know it." And so it's like and that kind of proves that like their kind of definition of knowledge requires like 100% certainty in something, which means you can never have knowledge, right? So you just have to
Mhm.
say like, I don't know anything. But like just because you know don't know anything doesn't mean like things can't be true because you can have evidence for it, right? Like I don't know how many like, atoms there are in the sun, but I know that there's like a true number somewhere out there.
Yeah. No, you said
Yeah.
it. You said it perfectly. Like, you can know that a thing exists, but not know what the
Yeah.
thing is. So, and this is actually
Yeah.
what we. This is why people need to study objectivism, which is hilarious. I'm bringing objectivism into this, but objectivism is important for this very reason, where you need to understand the axioms of logic. You need to understand
Mhm.
the three laws of logic, which are the law of identity, the law of non-contradiction, and the law of the excluded middle. You need to understand these things, and
Yeah.
you need to understand these things because they teach you the primacy of existence, the primacy of
Yeah.
consciousness, and the primacy of, I forget what the third one is. It might be the primacy of identity, whatever.
Mm.
This lays out the groundwork for objectivism, objective truth. Objective truth exists within a logical framework, and we're
Mhm.
all operating within a logical framework, so we have to accept that objective truth exists. Because if objective truth didn't exist, then the law of identity wouldn't exist, the law of non-contradiction wouldn't exist, and the law of the excluded middle wouldn't exist. But they do exist, and we know that they do exist, so you must accept objective truth.
Mhm. Oh, is that like the what is it like Ayn Rand's like
Yeah, it's Ayn
concept
Rand's
of
philosophy.
objectivism? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard people call themselves. I never like a lot of these terms. I just don't know what people like actually mean by them. They'll say like I'm an objectivist. I'm like, okay, what are the actual like entailments of the view? And it's like,
Yeah,
um, yeah.
man. It's interesting because objectivists
Because I
tend
was
to
wondering
be
like how
capitalists.
does yeah, and I was wondering how does that get you to like libertarianism? It was always strange to me. If it's just
Bro.
like yeah, I don't know. It's like because I
Oh
think I
my
can accept
god.
like first principles, like logic, all that. But it's like how does that entail? I don't know. Like weird.
I actually did I've gone down these rabbit holes before, and I have
Hmm.
to admit it's been a while since I went down this rabbit hole. And I could be wrong
Hmm.
about this. But I
Yeah.
was I was curious if objectivism was like the silver bullet to like all philosophies, like it destroys all philosophies. Like I was curious if that was the case, and I went down a rabbit hole of it. And
Yeah.
basically what I did was I did one premise at a time, from, because the claim is by what's his name, something P Ayn Rand's successor was, I forget his name, but I listened to his
Uh.
lectures.
Okay.
You know who I'm talking about. His name's like Peacock or something.
Okay.
Ayn
Uh,
Rand's successor. I'm not spelling right. Not that his name matters.
Leonard
Leonard
Peikoff. Peikoff. Leonard Peikoff.
Leonard
Yeah.
Peacock. I went down his like his syllogism of how it works, and
Yeah.
essentially the claim is that they can deduce from logical axioms to get to capitalism.
Yeah.
And the problem is I went through that syllogism and I couldn't. I found a leap somewhere. So I found something
Yeah.
that broke the chain. So it's very unfortunate. I wish you could. I wish you could logically prove capitalism. But the big
Yeah.
jump is, have you ever heard of the Izot gap?
Yep. 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 Yeah.
Okay. So
Humes,
the
yeah.
big claim is that they can bridge the Izot gap by deriving the oughts from the logical axioms of what is, and they say that you must adhere to capitalism because it's like the rules of nature or something. And what I would agree with the objectivists about is that there are objective ways in order to achieve the maximization of well-being to all people. And I would say that this is capitalism. The problem is you can't logically deduce that. You can inductively deduce that. You can't deductively deduce it. And that's the big thing.
Mm.
But objectivism's first half of their philosophy is
Yeah.
it's completely foundational, completely
Yeah.
unbreakable. If you just learn the first half of their philosophy, it is as true as the laws of logic.
Hmm.
But not the second half. The second half they make a leap to capitalism.
Yeah. Because like if it's just like it's like I feel like a lot of the arguments that I hear, like even for like praxeology, it's like I've always maybe this is like a clash, but like I don't know, it's like praxeology to me, it's like the idea that we try to from first principles derive like economic ideas, but it's
Hmm.
like it doesn't make sense to me because like on an economics level and like it seems that necessarily one of the premises needs to be like an observation of the world. Like I don't see how you could come to a like I mean you can make a logical syllogism that's valid that maybe comes to some economic conclusion, but I could just as easily make a valid logical syllogism that comes to the opposite conclusion. And so, like, it's like yeah, that's always been my criticism of every time someone tries to explain to me why we like praxeology is the best way to solve economics. It's like yeah, I mean like empiricism has its flaws, like it's not perfect, obviously, and because we don't have perfect models. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, so you are correct in
Mhm,
that. So praxeology, so in praxeology, deductive and inductive reasoning work together. And I
mhm,
understand what you're saying. You can't deductively get praxeology from the laws of logic.
yeah.
But if you combine so if you use presuppositions that all people agree on,
Mhm,
then you can create a deductive starting point in order to find the truth of human behavior. So, for example, the
mhm,
foundational axiom of praxeology is
mhm.
human
Humans
action.
act. Yeah.
Humans act, exactly. So the central axiom is that humans act purposefully to achieve their desired ends. And so the thing about
Yeah.
this is you can't deductively deduce this because you can't make a line of logic that gets from
Mhm,
logic to humanity, because humanity is not a consequence of the laws of logic. But you
mhm,
can create a starting point that everybody agrees on. If you
yeah.
disagree with it, then you're gonna have a lot more problems than human action. but but most
Mhm,
people, 99% of people agree on the starting point with praxeology. And this is
yeah.
why praxeology is irrefutable in our inductive system of reasoning. Whereas that everybody agrees that humans act. Um, Now
Mhm,
you might say, oh, that's kind of leaping, because your whole thing with like you don't agree with the idea of like the self or anything. In your case, you
mhm,
probably wouldn't agree with praxeology, but you would have way more problems than human action. You would have a lot of stuff you have to talk about. But if
yeah.
you agree with the starting point that humans act, then you can deductively deduce a whole host of issues about human behavior that are true if you accept this original premise.
Yeah, I don't know, because it's like, yeah, I guess my problem would be like, if we want to come to certain, like, even if we agree on the premise of human acts, I feel like even later down in the chain of reasoning, there has to be some kind of like relation back to like claims that aren't just don't just deductively follow from humans act, or if they do, like yeah, I feel like they're kind of question begging in a way. I feel like, for example, like if we're to sort of have a discussion of, let's say, I don't know, like does the minimum wage like raise unemployment or something, like common like economics debate, like because
Mm-hmm.
and it's like because all ANCAPs and like libertarians say it does, but like recently we've had like a lot of empirical evidence that kind of suggests the opposite. So it's been a big
California
like debate
disagrees.
there.
Just saying. Go ahead.
Pardon? Well, I mean, obviously it depends on the amount you raise it to, like obviously, but yeah, but I don't know, and I guess like I've yet to see it of like someone make like a purely logical, like valid logical syllogism that is where the premises could not be refuted for why the minimum wage necessarily must raise unemployment, or and why I couldn't just make like my own like valid logical syllogism using different economic premises that wouldn't like. It feels like at some point we'd have to look to the real world and like analyze like, okay, what are the actual economic effects.
Mhm.
Like we couldn't do it just purely from logic, but yeah.
That's fair. Praxeology doesn't get into anything that uh
Mhm.
would that be vague, or I don't know the quite correct term.
Specific.
Praxeology like sets the foundation for
Yeah.
economics. It doesn't get into like it basically start makes the rules for how economics works. So I don't think it's
Yeah.
going to tell you anything. You can use praxeology to figure out if the minimum wage helps or hurts the economy, but like
Mhm.
but you have to. But yeah, that's more accurate to say. You can use praxeology to figure out the answer to that, but it's not like you deduce from praxeology to get to if the minimum wage is beneficial or not. Praxeology is like a
Mhm.
set of rules that you know are true, and if you find something that interferes or contradicts with that rule, you know that that thing's not true.
Mhm. Um, okay. I mean, yeah, I don't know. Like, I guess yeah, that would be my question. It's like it seems like I don't know. Can you actually like get all the way like from the rules from the base establishment of like are you saying that like from the base premise of humans act that you could get all the way to the conclusion that like minimum wage I don't know has bad effects? Like, do you think that we
No,
could
no, you can't do that.
right? Okay, okay, yeah.
No,
I don't know. Yeah, I guess
because it
yeah.
creates the rules. But like
Mhm.
I can list out like the axioms that are corollary that are derived from human action. So like you can say
Mhm.
that people make
Yeah.
choices about how to
Yeah.
allocate their resources over time to achieve their goals. And this
Yeah.
all is assuming, and that's really complicated. But this is
Yeah.
basically this is corollary to the axiom that humans act. But yeah, that's like the axiom of action and time. There's the axiom of means and ends, meaning resources or tools that individuals. Sorry, that's a definition
Yeah.
thing. Means are resources or tools that individuals use to achieve their goals. Ends are the goals or objectives that individuals aim to achieve through their actions. There's
Mhm.
also scarcity. Resources are limited, and individuals must make choices. Now, scarcity in itself isn't derived from um, human action, but scarcity
Mhm.
is an axiom in and of itself. It's just true that scarcity exists in the world, and you're combining that with the idea of because resources are limited and individuals must make choices about how to use them effectively, they will make choices about how to use them effectively, if that makes sense.
Mm.
It's kind of
Um,
complicated, so I don't.
mhm. Yeah, probably we
Yeah.
probably yeah don't need to get into it too much. Like I don't know, maybe it's a conversation for another day. But
But dude, you should
yeah,
definitely look into praxeology. I think it would change the way you view economics because praxeology
yeah.
really is the best form of evidence for economics because it sets
Mhm.
ground rules that everyone can agree on. And if you don't agree on these ground rules, then you've got a lot bigger problems than how economics works. So definitely check out praxeology. Super
Yeah,
useful
maybe.
for how to view economics.
Yeah, it's really yeah. I guess I mean most of my understanding, to be honest, from of anything to do with libertarianism or anarchist philosophy and anarcho-capitalist philosophy just has to come from me like arguing with a bunch of people. So could be the
Yeah.
case that I've talked to a bunch of people who just badly represent the view, but like it all just like comes off as a bit like incoherent to me. But maybe I haven't been reading the right, I don't know,
I don't
theorists or
blame you,
whatever.
dude, because
Yeah.
like I haven't always been libertarianism. At some point,
Hmm.
I was very like, because and this may be what led me to libertarianism. I'm an extremely open minded person, and this led
Hmm.
me to like asking like questions. Like when I was
Yep.
younger, when I was younger, I was like I was kind of like more leaning towards socialism. I didn't like fully
Hmm.
endorse it, but I was like, yeah, wait, it doesn't make any sense that companies have like a giant pay gap. Like, how come the bosses make, $40,000 more? They should only make $10,000 more. And I went through like
Yeah.
this whole idea of like, okay, this is how it should work. It should be at the bottom you make, 40,000 and the next guy makes 50,000, the next guy makes 60,000. And that's
Hmm.
how I used to view it. Very simplistic
Hmm.
terms, but like if you keep an
Yeah.
open mind, it's going to lead you to question how things work, why
Yeah.
they work the way they do, and that's going to be very, very beneficial for you.
Hmm.
Yeah, but that was
Okay.
just a
Cool.
side tangent.
Yeah. No. All right, yeah, I think we've touched on a lot. Actually, I did want to just I don't know if this is like some because I think towards the beginning, you mentioned that you kind of affirm argumentation ethics still. Is that right? True? Did I hear
Yes.
that correctly?
Yeah.
Or
Yep. That's true.
all right, that's my favorite topic to debate. So
Holy fuck! Yeah, I saw you debating with Sithis, and it was just
yeah.
interesting. It was interesting.
Hmm.
You guys were like talking about sleep and shit. Oh my god! I was like, what the hell is going on? But yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I guess if I could just lay out my basic arguments for why I don't agree with argumentation ethics. I think it's um, like I guess it makes a lot of logical leaps in terms of to establish the premise. I've watched like all the debates on it. I've watched like people like Liquid Zulu debate it with a bunch of people. I think he's done, and
Mm,
yeah, I think the only way you can get out of it is by making a bunch of really really vague claims that you can't justify. So like because so the argument that I was making with Citis was just that okay, if it's true that I'm like contradicting myself when I argue for aggression in the context of argument, because like the justification is that I can't argue for aggression when I'm in argument because argumentation requires peacefulness, which is like sure, but the argument that I'm making is that like it only requires peacefulness within the context of the argument, and outside of the argument, I can aggress, and there's no contradiction. Just like for example, like within the context of the argument, I can't be asleep, but outside of
hmm
the context of the argument, I could go to sleep, and there's no contradiction there. And so I could argue like just like I could argue I should aggress within a certain context. I could argue that I should sleep at a certain context, and neither of these are contradictory. Like, or like, if you want to argue that they're contradictory, both of them have to be. It can't be like one or the other. That was my argument to set this, and yeah,
Okay. Let me put out the positive claim about why argumentation ethics are true, and then you can respond to that. And
sure.
so like I'm a simple guy. I like to put things in simple terms that I can understand easily because that's just how I operate. And the
Yeah,
thing about Liquid Zulu is he's a smart dude, but he talks
yeah,
very complex ways that make it sometimes hard to understand what he's talking about. But
yeah,
okay,
yeah.
so argumentation ethics, first of all, is not an ethical framework. It's not any type of normative framework. The way that I look at
Mm,
argumentation ethics is it is a deductive framework for
mhm,
how to view how conversation works. It's essentially like a set of rules or like a set of deductive truths that just are true tautologically. Okay. So
mhm,
the idea is that argumentation, and this is the key
mhm,
word,
yeah,
argumentation is a rational discourse that is inherently non-aggressive. Now,
mhm,
the problem I had with argumentation ethics for the longest time, and this is
yeah,
the ultimate Christmas, what the fuck, criticism of argumentation ethics is that you can be doing aggressive things or deceitful things while talking, and this
yeah,
therefore invalidates argumentation ethics.
yeah,
Argumentation ethics are not that broad at all. Argumentation
yeah,
ethics is simply the idea that if you are engaging in good faith, and that's also an
yeah,
important word, in good faith in a debate, you
yeah,
are not are not aggressing. It's
yeah.
basically as simple as saying if you are not aggressing, you are not aggressing.
All
That's
right.
basically what it's
Um,
saying. So if we're having a
yeah,
conversation, and I'll put out some examples. Unless you want to
yeah.
respond to what I said, I've got examples that we can more clearly see why this is the case. But go ahead if you want to respond.
Yeah. I mean, based on what the way you're conceptualizing it, it seems. I mean, yeah, it doesn't seem to have the sort of the normative weight that people like Zulu put into it, where it's like because like I mean they attempt to establish that like sort of the idea that we have an objective basically yeah what he says I remember is there is it's not a normative claim, it's just a descriptive claim that we can't you cannot justify aggression without contradicting yourself, and but it seems like what you're saying just more said that like yeah when you are I do agree with what you said, I guess like when you are arguing you're not aggressing, you're arguing, so you can't be aggressing like that
Yeah,
seems ontologically true, yeah.
yeah, basically. And again, like my biggest criticism was like, oh, what if you're arguing in bad faith? And it's like, it's funny because it's baked into argumentation ethics that you are arguing in good faith because
Yeah,
the way argumentation ethics views argumentation is
yeah,
is you have to be not aggressing in order to be arguing. So if you're aggressing, you're not arguing. If you're arguing, you're arguing in good faith. But if you're arguing in bad faith, that you're not arguing. So it's very tautologically saying that if you are arguing, parentheses, in good faith, parentheses, then you are what's the statement? Argumentation ethics is inherently non-aggressive. And it's just funny because, well, yeah, obviously when you're not aggressing, you're not aggressing. But that being said, I'm going to give you the example that I thought killed the argument, which I dubbed this argument the Cyclops in the road hypothetical. Yeah. So the way this goes is a man is walking and he encounters a Cyclops that is blocking the road. Now, he doesn't like that the Cyclops is, blocking the road. Maybe he wants to kill the Cyclops because he's a Cyclops racist. But he hates the Cyclops. He doesn't want the Cyclops in the road, and he wants him to move out of the way because he wants to pass by. Here's the thing. The Cyclops is a Cyclops. So he's big, he's super strong, he's got a giant fucking wooden club, okay? And he can smash the man to pieces if he wants to. So this man's only resort is to negotiate with the Cyclops. Because if he was bigger than the Cyclops, he would just kill the Cyclops. But he can't do that because he's weaker than the Cyclops. So the man engages in argumentation or negotiation with the Cyclops because he wants to pass by and he doesn't want to be smashed by the Cyclops. He lacks the power to be aggressive. So the man engages in peaceful negotiation. It's not a reflection of his ethical stance, but as a consequence of his lack in power. So even though he wants to do violence, if he has the means, he doesn't have the means, so he goes and negotiates. Now, here's where this hypothetical falls apart. What falls apart is the man is negotiating in bad faith. He doesn't actually mean the argumentation. He's basically, if there was an audience, and you could do this with like online debaters too. He's not coming into a place with good faith because it's baked into the assumption that when you're arguing, you are arguing in good faith. And if you're not arguing in good faith, they would call this a deceitful way of arguing or something like that. But it wouldn't be considered arguing. So in very simple terms, argumentation ethics is the simple tautological stance that you're arguing. You can only argue. The word argue means to argue in good faith. That's essentially the key thing right there.
Okay. Okay. So I guess I guess everything you said there makes sense. I'm just wondering, what would you say are like the implications of us granting that to be true? Like, I agree that like for argument's sake, we should be good faith. I mean, I think everyone agrees with that generally, but I guess I'm assuming you don't, because it seems like the way that you conceptualize argumentation, I think, is very different from how like people like Zulu do it, where like they try to like they go the performative contradiction route, right? Like of arguing.
Yeah.
So like, what do you think are like the implications of it? Do you just think it's like by arguing it necessitates that you must argue in good faith? Is that like the argument, or?
Yeah, that's the argument. Now I think the way that Liquid Zulu uses this, and some libertarians use argumentation ethics, is they kind of say that you must adhere to argumentation ethics, and because you must adhere to it, you can't commit aggressions to people or something. Like, it's very confusing how it works. I think what they're saying is if you are aggressing upon people, yeah. No. Here it is. There's no rational way to aggress upon people. I think that's their big thing.
Yeah, it's like because it'd be a performative contradiction. Like if you, that's what they claim. Yeah.
Correct. So taxing people who don't agree to be taxed goes against the idea of it's irrational, because you can't rationally aggress upon someone, and that's somehow baked into argumentation ethics.
Mm. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, I mean,
I forget how the
yeah.
full. I'm not like the expert in argumentation ethics. I understand the fundamental way argumentation ethics works. I don't know how you apply it broadly to
Yeah.
like our governments, aggressing upon innocent people and stuff like that. But the
Yeah.
basic idea is that you can't win a rational argument if you're aggressing. And so I guess the
Mhm.
argument there is if you can't win a rational argument while in the form of aggression, then a government can't um rationally what they can't rationally justify their aggression. I guess that's the implications of argumentation ethics.
Mhm. Yeah. All right. I guess yeah. There's a couple of challenges there. That I would have. I guess like so on one hand, like yeah, on the concept of aggression, I think this is something we touched on before. This gets into a bit of a different rabbit hole, but it's like
Mm.
it's about how we define aggression and all that. But like even disregarding that for now, if I just look at the argument on its face, so basically the argument is that the government cannot rationally justify
Aggression.
aggression in the context of argument. And I guess so the reason for that would be if they were to try to argue, for example, that they should tax like I don't know, like Jeff Bezos, and they were arguing with Jeff Bezos that they should tax Jeff Bezos. Well, like would it be that would you say it's because they would be arguing in bad faith by arguing that they want to tax him or like they want to aggress upon him? Or like what's the
So
logical
yeah, so
yeah.
so the way this would go is the government would never engage in a conversation with you about taxing you. They would just take your money, which is what they do, right? Like
Yeah.
you don't see like the IRS show up and the dude's like, "Take a fucking seat. I'm going to get some beers and we're going to negotiate that you can't take my money." No, that doesn't happen. You pay
Yeah.
the money or the IRS comes to your house and they put you in jail, right?
Yeah.
There's no negotiation to be had. So
Yeah.
if the government was to negotiate with, like you said, Jeff Bezos,
Yeah.
they would have no rational justification for why they're allowed to take Jeff Bezos' money away, right? They would have no rational justification, which is why they just go the route of force. They just take the money. They don't argue. But the idea is that there is no rational justification for the use of force, or the use of aggression, not force.
Hmm. It kind of seems to me that there's a bit of a leap there in the logic because
Okay.
like if I so if the government like yeah the government obviously doesn't argue with you when they take your money, but
Mm-hmm.
like I guess the point is that they could, right, if they wanted to, like if they were to first argue at like a certain at point X, say in the morning, they're like, "Hey, we're gonna come to your house tonight, and we're gonna take the money that you owe us, or whatever."
Mm-hmm.
And they like make a bunch of arguments for it, like we should be able to because of X or Y reasons, because it benefits whatever, like all, like whatever. Why would it then be like? Would that argument be irrational, like inherently, because of they're making the
Um,
argument?
so the thing is, what is their argument, right? Like that's
Mhm.
the key point right there. What is their argument for taking your money? Is it a rational argument?
Mm. Okay. Um. Right. So well, I mean, like it would come down to I guess it depends on the rules that we're defining for setting out for the rationality there. I mean like I think like for
Yeah.
example like they could give the justification that I was giving for like welfare. Like let's say we like oh it's like I believe that by taxing we're going to help like alleviate poverty and stuff like that. We don't have to get into that again like that whole argument we already
Mhm.
had. But like if they gave that justification, I guess you would say that's not a rational justification.
Yeah, so I think this is where natural law comes into it. I think that
Mhm.
some libertarians believe that in the existence of natural law, and so they would say you're going against like the laws of nature to use an aggression. But they would
Mhm.
probably build a case of natural law comes down to argumentation ethics, and then argumentation ethics is like is the arena of where you find your justification. So if if the government can't rationally justify, um, the longer I talk about this, the more vague it becomes.
Yeah.
If the government can't rationally, um, if they can't rationally appeal to some justification for why they're taking your money, they are in the wrong to be taking your
Mhm.
money, and wrong in the term of it's against nature to do so.
Mm.
But it depends on your value systems. That's the key difference, because a government's
Yeah.
value system is for its own self-interest. The government wants to consume, it wants to grow powerful, and it wants to serve the interest of itself, and it will take the path to doing so. But this is also the
Yeah.
case for every single person. Every single person values their own self-interest, but more than anyone else's. So
Yeah.
so if you've ever heard this, might makes right is a ethical, it's a value it's a value statement, or something. It's like a, what is the word I'm looking for? It's a judgment call, or it's a value statement. Might makes
Okay.
right, or
Yeah.
it's a prescriptive statement. But might
Yeah.
makes is a descriptive statement,
Yeah.
because might is how the world operates, technically speaking. Technically, if you're powerful enough, you can do whatever you want, and no one's going to stop you, because might makes
Yeah.
because you can do whatever you want if you have enough power. But
Mm.
when you start going into prescriptions like might makes right, well, then you're saying that might is the value statement in and of itself. So that's
Mhm.
the way I look at it.
Mm. Okay. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it sounds like basically, yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah, I guess the way that you formalize it is less of a stronger, like less of a strong sort of claim than like the other people who propose argumentation ethics do, because it's like, technically speaking, like you could just get out of it by, if we have like a different value sort of judgment here of like kind of like the ones that I described for justifying a sort of state ethic. It seems that we can kind of just like escape the sort of like the criticism of argumentation ethics just by like based on that value judgment. Am I reading
Yeah.
that right, or? Yeah.
I could be totally wrong about this, but I think that argumentation ethics derives its strength from natural law. And
Yeah.
natural law is a presupposition which you should be attacking, because that's a
Hmm.
pretty strong presupposition to have in the existence of natural law, meaning there are objectively true, or they're objectively right or wrong things to do, or objectively right or wrong things on how to carry yourself and how to behave. I think that's sort of what natural law is. Um,
Hmm.
and so that's the
Um.
presupposition you need to be holding, because it has normative implications to it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I'd be skeptical of natural law as well. So, yeah, I mean, it'd be, yeah.
That's ironic, because you're a fucking moral realist naturalist. So you would be the one who believes in natural law.
I guess if you're like, well, my understanding of natural law was like because like the way that I've heard it explained, and again, like this is all just what I hear from libertarians. It's like they're like, oh, these we have these like natural rights that are like just derived from just
The
things that like,
nature,
yeah, nature,
laws of
yeah,
the universe.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's I guess in a sense kind of similar to the what I see as like a sort of naturalist moral philosophy, but I feel like the way that they argue for it's kind of dumb to me, like you know, where it's like where they're like, oh, it's like because I think it's like one of the values is like because we're alive, therefore life has value. Which I guess
Mhm.
like in a way is true because if you didn't value your life, I guess you would do the thing that makes you not alive. But
I would say that's a pretty big leap. I would say that a more accurate statement is life is the standard of value, which is something
Mhm.
I've heard objectivists say, especially divinity. Life is the
Hmm.
standard of value. I would not say that because you are alive, life is valuable. Because that is a
Mhm.
leap. Because
Yeah.
life is alive is a descriptive statement. Life is valuable is a prescriptive statement. So you have to bridge
Yeah.
the is-ought gap to get there.
Yeah, I think I heard I think it was Zulu who was like, well, to because it goes back to like the contradiction thing where it's like to say that you don't value life would be to the contradiction was like, oh, then well, but you choose to live, and it's like, I guess I don't know. It's like, yeah, it is kind of like a leap, I guess. Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
to be clear,
yeah,
so actions speak louder than words, and your actions
yeah,
are in fact your true self, more so than anything your words could speak about. So it is true to say that if every moment you live, you value life more than you value death. That's just true. It's objectively true.
yeah,
Because
yeah, yeah, yeah,
if you value death more than life, well, then you would value death, if you get my meaning.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um,
exactly. Yeah,
so that is objectively true.
yeah,
Because you will
yeah.
do what you value. And that's one of the praxeological axioms. Humans act
Mhm.
purposefully, and they act purposefully towards the things that they value.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't disagree with that axiom. It's or like that sort of fundamental claim.
Mm.
Um, yeah, it's just I don't know. Like yeah, I mean, in terms of what you've described for argumentation ethics, I don't think there's anything I necessarily disagree with. It just seems that yeah, because it rests upon like the presupposition of like a set of the values that yeah, that you would need to have like a libertarian stance, and I guess if so from my perspective, if someone is coming from someone who doesn't hold any of those libertarian like stances or intuitions, then it seems that yeah, it doesn't really yeah, it doesn't really change my sort of or doesn't really like prove anything about my specific ethical values, but yeah, I don't know. That's at least what I got from that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's true. Um, but I mean, to be completely fair, my system of whatever beliefs and justifications is uh
Mm.
is a little bit weird compared to normal libertarians because they mostly believe in like the normative value of the NAP and the normative value of libertarianism. And I understand where they're coming from because we do
Mhm.
value load terms like morality and we value load yeah, basically morality, morals, and this is why people don't really understand what morality is. But yeah, libertarians mostly believe in natural law. They believe that there is some sort of moral implications of the NAP. But for me being a consequentialist libertarian, it's going to be a
Yeah.
little bit weirder to people who don't understand like the libertarian point of view, just because all your best arguments kind of are like they kind of attack the idea of moral realism,
Hmm.
or like the libertarian form of moral realism.
Hmm. True. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. All right. Well, I think we've covered like yeah, we've been on for a while, haven't we?
Yeah, Dan, we talked about a lot, dude. We've had good conversations, I think.
Yeah, that was pretty interesting. I think you're like probably the sanest anarcho-capitalist I've talked to. Um,
Yeah,
because you're
true.
not
It's
you don't believe
because
in
I'm the
any of the
truest.
weird ethics.
I'm the truest
Yeah, good.
anarchist.
Because at least you're a
Um,
consequentialist, so we have some agreement. Yeah.
yeah, well, the thing is, I actually figured out that I've logically deduced that not only is everybody an egoist, but everybody is a consequentialist and a deterministic. Via deductive logic, I've concluded this. Um, so everybody is in their nature an egoist, a determinist, and a consequentialist, and you can't escape it. And it's very simple. But we don't have to talk about that. It's just true, though.
Uh, yeah. I mean, um, yeah. I don't know. I mean, in terms of the egoism thing. Yeah, I mean, we have a disagreement there in terms of how we, I guess maybe just how we define it or something. But yeah, I don't know how. If we rehash it, we could probably be gone. We could go on for like another 10 hours. I don't know.
That's
um,
true.